What exactly is a force, anyway?
You gonna learn today.
Greetings and welcome back to Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. This is a continuation of my Force Guide Overhaul video. Last week we talked about skills, so today we're going to be getting into techniques. So, let's get into it. So, first things first, we're going to talk about the rod. This is the Force's bread and butter, in my opinion. But we're not here to talk about my opinion. So let's instead not worry about that and focus on what the rod can do for you. So to start with that, we're going to use the weapon action. As you see, the normal attack of the rod creates a photon bullet that you can use to shoot at your enemies. Although it's not really a shoot action, it's more like a magic missile. If you think about it. But yeah, basically means that you don't have to get close up to attack your enemies to get your photon points out back. And the main purpose of this is to help with your photon points. At least I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, you attack enemies in order to recover photon points, because your photon points do go up faster if you're attacking, unless your natural photon point recovery is super high. So next we have the weapon action, and let's see if I can find a big enemy to use this on, so I can actually show off what this does. Because if you see, I'm holding the button down, it's not staying up. It's meant for blocking. It's not. Oh, it's meant for parrying. It's not meant for blocking. Come on, attack me. Not you. Okay, you know what? Alright, did you see that grid of hexagons around me as I parried that attack? That's how you know you succeeded at a parry. And then, if you cast a technique afterward, you see the bullets that are coming out as you cast a technique? That's your counter. That's how the weapon action works for the rod. So next, I'm going to switch over to Talus, and instead of a bullet, the Talus just throws. Oh, actually, that kind of does look like a bullet. Hold on. Okay, is that just how the Talus looks? I don't know. Yeah. In Pt2, you send a card out, and then you can cast a technique from that card. Apparently, Talus's normal attack is just like Rod's normal attack, and you can't use the normal attack to cast techniques at a distance anymore. Okay. This is I've never used Talus before in NGS before now, so that's news to me. So the weapon action sends out a card that attacks enemies. Okay. That's actually kind of interesting. That kind of reminds me of Gazond, in a way. I guess it's kind of attacking in the directions that I'm moving. Right. So. I believe the photon arch changed the way your techniques work. Which, if I do this, yeah, it kind of changes your techniques into like this singular shot. Spread shot turns your techniques into a singular shot. That's kind of weird. And whether I cast Gizond or Gifoy or Gifoy, there we go. It all kind of looks the same. Whereas this other one does this kind of weird effect. So Talus just kind of comes off as being very unusual to me, personally. I mean, I have never used it before, so there is that. Right, I probably should have done some research on the Talus before making this. But yeah, now the reason I haven't really worried about it before now is that I've had somebody who actually regularly used the Talus tells me that it's not very good for damage. And I'm kind of seeing that because the photon arts really kind of change up how your techniques work, and it kind of like it's definitely kind of odd to grasp for me as a new player, but I can see how this can be a bit of a problem. I don't really know how to explain how it would be. Well, here, let's go ahead and just test it out some here. Gotta do here. Let's see how the Talus performs with all the skills I just gave it. I don't use any photon arts. These my techniques work normally. So let's use one and start using techniques. And you can't even charge techniques when you're doing it like this. And they home in, which that's a nice touch, I have to admit. Alright. Let's try to get some photon points back. Alright, there we go. Let's use the other one now. And yeah, you can't charge them like this either. Which, yeah, I can see how this would go towards spamming better. So maybe it's not how. So maybe with talents, it's not how much damage you do with a single move. It's how much damage you can short out. You can push out as quickly as possible. So that's a thought, I guess. Oh, apparently they have a bit of a duration to how they work. Oh, and then if you use both of them, if you use both of the photon arts in unison, like you use one and then the other in quick succession, that also changes how they work. That's interesting to learn. Okay, I think we've learned just about as much as we can about how the talus works. So I'm gonna go switch my skills back up, and we're gonna focus on the techniques themselves. We're gonna start with Foey. You cast Foey, a little ball goes out, and then when it hits an opponent, it kind of explodes into a cyclone. And the cyclone deals extra damage as well, although it's kind of minor. Like, you get 444 damage and like 3 hits of 37. Then we're going to charge Foey, and that just causes the ball of fire to kind of appear around your enemy and then explode. This time there's no cyclone, but it can hit multiple targets, which is interesting. Let's see here. Next we have Foey, which creates a tornado of fire around you. This is decent for mobbing, but it's not the strongest mobbing tool in the Force's arsenal. We'll talk about that more next week. Then you charge Foey. I can lock onto a target real quick. And it creates this kind of pillar of flame, which itself creates like little tornadoes around it, in a sense. And it hits whatever enemy gets caught in it. It hits 3 times. I don't think it can hit multiple targets, but I could be wrong about that. So let's move on to the next element. You have Barda, which just kind of creates a ray of ice that from you to your target. And it doesn't really cling to the ground like in previous Phantasy Star games. It kind of like just goes from your center to the center of your enemy. Which if I target on these little ones, yeah, that's basically what happens. Then you charge Barda, you cast it, and it's the exact same thing, although it's a little bit bigger. So I could get some distance on these things to kind of show that off. Here we go. Yeah, there's definitely more to the Ray of Ice, but it's still just a Ray of Ice. See, then you have Gibarda, which creates kind of a cone of cold, like this cone of ice damage that goes, and then you charge it up, and it looks exactly the same. Oh, maybe I'm just not charging it right. Hang on. No. Yeah, that looks. I mean, okay, it's a little bit thicker. Charge Gibarda is a little bit thicker, but not by much. But yeah, unlike most techniques, I find that Barda, the ice techniques, like change the least, depending on whether you charge them or not. So next we're gonna move on to the lightning techniques. Let me find another group of enemies here. So Zond, you know it, you love it, you cast it. Single bolt of lightning hits the ground, and if it hits a target, it causes a chain lightning effect, which hits all the other targets around you. Very awesome tech, but that's just my opinion speaking. So, no. Then you charge Zond, and it still has the chain lightning effect. Okay, you know what? Maybe I should just move on to a different enemy. Casting Zond that really was a mistake. You charge Zond. It hits 3 times. The third hit deals more damage. Oh, and I don't think it actually does have the chain lightning effect to it, because a lot more enemies would be dead if it was. So yeah. You sacrifice the chain lightning attack for focusing on a single target, I guess. Kind of destroys the technique's mobbing skill, but I mean, it's better that way if you're fighting a boss that's weak to lightning, I guess. So we move on to Gizon. You cast it. It creates this little turret, similar to like the Talus's weapon action, only instead of like shooting at cards, it shoots lightning bolts. Then you charge Gizon, and it creates kind of like a shorter lasting target that shoots lightning bolts all over the place. Not even necessarily around you, because I'm moving and it's not. Yeah, that's what that does. So let's move on to the next element. Zon. Here we go. Okay, so let me not cast this at anything. I want to destroy these guys with normal attacks here. Just to kind of show off exactly how Zan works with the no clutter. You cast it, 3 rain blades appear. The ones on the ends kind of curve out, then level out only to kind of curve back in, letting all 3 of your blades come together at a certain distance in front of you. That could be manipulated, but most combats are kind of out of control, so it's kind of hard to use that as well. Maybe you should practice with it. I don't know. Then you charge Zan, and it's a single blade. Can I get that without the wind bullets, please? Can I get that without the bullets, please? Thank you. It's just a single blade. But that single blade does more damage than the little ones do. So next up we have Gizon, and I'm going to go ahead and find a target for this one. Here. Gizon is just like this little tornado you cast. It appears around the enemy, and it deals damage, you know. Simple enough technique. And much like the wind spells, you charge it, and it's just the same thing, only like more. Oh, and apparently it can hit multiple enemies, which is interesting. Although its form of hitting multiple enemies is just spawning more tornadoes, but only like in a small area. That's interesting. Next we have the light techniques. Let's see here. So light, you cast grants. You just throw swords of light at your enemy, which is interesting, I think. So you charge grants, and it's just more swords. There we go. So next up is Gi grants. And it just kind of creates this beam of light that circles around you, kind of like a sword spin. Decent mobbing tool like Gi Force, not as good as Zond, but we're going to talk about that later. But you charge Gi grants, and it's beams of light, and with the mechanic, it's even more, of course. But yeah, you got 3 beams of light that kind of travel upward at the ends, allowing you to graze your target better. So next we have, so you cast Megid, just a ball of light, just a ball of darkness is what it is. That I hear. Now you charge it without the mechanic, and it's just the same thing. It's just a ball of light, similar to the ice techniques that way. It might be a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can cast them in succession. No, it's just the same, basically. There we go. So now we have Gi Magid, and that just creates a ball of darkness around your enemies, kind of like Gizon. You charge it, though, and it's kind of a pillar of darkness. So that's all of the techniques. I guess I could focus on showing off the mechanics now. Although I kind of have to a point. Yeah, let's do that actually. So you cast fire techniques at him. All right, you see that triangular thing there? That's Foebrand. Then you charge a fire spell at him. The thing explodes, doing extra damage. That's how the fire mechanic works. Now the ice mechanic, if you've been watching this channel, you should know it pretty well already. You keep casting, a badge kind of appears on him, you keep casting, and he's dead, so we're going to have to move on to the next target. But yeah, eventually, when that thing fully grows, you cast a charged ice spell at it, it explodes, it deals additional damage. You know what, let's go ahead and move on to Zon, because we got a whole bunch of trash mobs over here. Okay, there you go. You see the purple ring around me? Yeah, you charge, it deals extra damage, and the ring goes away. That's how the electric technique works. The wind technique is simple. You click an enemy, you lock onto an enemy, you cast an uncharged, let's say Gizon. Okay, I'm gonna have to use it. I'm gonna have to use it after turbo toggle. Let me lock onto you. Okay. So that circle around the enemy, you charge a wind technique, and the circle explodes, dealing additional damage. I think that's the one that said extra attacks or something in the skill description. So light's next. I'm just gonna keep charging grants until it comes up. Okay, it's come up. I'm gonna charge it, and as you can see, there's even more swords. So yeah, the light element's mechanic just increases the number of attacks, like visibly increases the number of attacks. And then of course you have Medjed, you get the 3 balls behind you, you charge a technique, and you get more attacks depending on the technique you charge. And I'll show you that again with Medjed instead of Medjed. Let me find somebody else to lock onto. You charge, more attacks. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just start killing enemies until I have a couple of charges of compound techniques, and then I will show those off. So the first of the 3 compound techniques is called Fomeglion. You cast it, you create a sword of fire and darkness, you swing it. Deals a bunch of damage, like 4-digit damage, which is good. And then you have a cooldown for a while. Next we have Varancion, and I like this one, but I'm not going to say why until next week. So, let's use Varancion. You kind of charge up this orb that you throw at your opponent. Well, you charge up this spear that you throw up at an opponent. It creates this orb surrounded by spears, and then they kind of, I guess, attack. And you get a bunch of damage, and you get your ice and light mechanics activated. Much like Fomeglion activated your fire and dark mechanics. So next we have this one. What is this one called? Zandleon. Right. Zandleon's a bit of an oddball in this one. So let me target its other one, because I don't want this thing going into the ground while I'm swinging at it. That only has the one? Okay, fine. So Zandleon. You rush at your enemy and then just hit them with a bunch of like lightning and wind attacks, and it activates your lightning mechanic and it activates your wind mechanic. And those are the 3 compound techniques. I've shown off all of the skills that a force has access to, the 2 weapons of choice that they have, and the techniques that you will be casting a lot as a force. The main thing to think about if you're thinking about trying force out, you want to be using your techniques as much as possible. That is where the bulk of your damage is going to be. Even if you're using, like, regardless of whichever weapon you're using, spamming techniques is how you get your damage in. Which means you're going to want to focus on either natural photon point recovery or offensive photon point recovery, depending on which one you want to rely on more. Force, in summary, Force can reach almost near infinite amounts of photon points for the purposes of spamming techniques. Now, when I posted the original version of this guide, somebody mentioned chaining techniques, like stacking techniques, I think is what they said, which doesn't really make much sense to me because they do wear out after a while if you don't use them. So I don't really see how you would get them all together. Like, I can kind of see how you would get a lot of damage together for some of them. Some are better than others in terms of damage, and I'll go over that next week. But at any rate, just get your gear up, focus on technique potency, of course. Just spam techniques. Remember to get your counters in if you are running Rod. I used to play Rod as far away from the enemy as possible, spamming techniques. With Rod, you're really better off staying close by your opponent and parrying attacks as much as possible, because those elemental bullets, getting a lot of those in short succession will really boost your damage up. But that's all I've got for today. This has been my Overhauled Force Guide. Hopefully this is a lot better and a lot more manageable for people to use. And I know I've done my best to keep my bias out of it as much as possible. But that's all I've got for you for today. If you got this point in the video, it means the world to me, as it always does. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Farewell. So let me go ahead and kill this guy real quick, and we will go back, and I will go back.
Encore.
There we go. Nope, no encore. I'm out. Bye!